The Mona Lisa's billion-dollar secret. Why the world's most famous painting is still a mystery. Stop scrolling for just one moment. Look at this image, the Mona Lisa. What do you see? A small, slightly faded portrait sealed behind bulletproof glass in a massive museum surrounded by a screaming camera-wielding mob 10 people deep. You queue for hours. You get 30 seconds of viewing time. You take a blurry photo. And then, you walk away, often feeling completely underwhelmed. That's it, you might think. That's the most famous painting in the world. And yet, the Mona Lisa is universally famous. It's been stolen, sung about, copied, satirized, and studied for 500 years. It's valued unofficially at over $1 billion. It's protected by its own security detail, its own climate control. It is, quite simply, the closest thing art has to a true global celebrity. But here's the hook, the core question this video will answer. Why? Why isn't it the Sistine Chapel? Why isn't it the Starry Night? Why does this specific tiny wooden panel painting hold the entire art world hostage? The answer isn't simple. It's a perfect, almost cosmic cocktail of genius, revolutionary technique, profound psychological mystery, and a history of high-stakes crime. Today, we're peeling back the centuries. We're going beyond the smile to uncover the secret techniques of Leonardo da Vinci, the strange history of a king's private collection, and the criminal act that more than anything else turned a painting into a legend. This story is about fame, how it's built, how it's stolen, and why sometimes mystery is far more powerful than beauty itself. If you're ready to unlock the secret behind the world's most famous smirk, let's dive into mindset momentum. To understand the Mona Lisa, you first have to understand the man who painted her, Leonardo da Vinci. He wasn't just an artist. He was the Renaissance ideal, a polymath, an inventor, a military engineer, a botanist, a geologist, an anatomist, and yes, a mad, obsessive genius. When he started this portrait around 1503 in Florence, he wasn't just using paint and brush. He was using 5 decades of scientific study. He approached the canvas not like a painter, but like a researcher. He studied optics, human vision, the way light diffuses in the atmosphere, and the subtle mechanics of muscle movement in the face. This wasn't a simple portrait commission. It was a personal experiment in capturing the essence of human life on a stationary panel. The subject, historically identified as Lisa Gherardini, the wife of a wealthy Florentine cloth merchant named Francesco del Giocondo, was probably just a model for Leonardo's ambition. He wasn't interested in making a photographic copy of Lisa. He was interested in capturing the uncapturable, the soul in motion. Think about every portrait that existed before this moment. They were flat, they were stiff, they were formal, a two-dimensional record of status and wealth. Leonardo shattered that convention. He brought the sitter out from the static background and placed her in a dynamic psychological space. He broke the frame and invited us in. He made her live. But how? How did a few layers of oil paint transform into something that seems to breathe? The answer lies in the radical techniques that Leonardo either invented or perfected, making the Mona Lisa a technical marvel that wouldn't be surpassed for centuries. This is the part where the genius becomes visible. The fame of the Mona Lisa rests on three revolutionary technical pillars. We're going to break them down because they are the real secrets behind that billion-dollar reputation. The first pillar is a technique so complex, so subtle that no one has ever truly replicated it. Sfumato. The word literally means smoked or smoky. Imagine trying to paint the exact point where a shadow ends and a highlight begins. It's an impossible boundary. Traditional painting draws a line. Leonardo refused the line. He used dozens of layers of incredibly thin, translucent oil glaze, so thin, in fact, that analysis shows some layers are only 2 micrometers thick, to create a transition so gradual that the human eye cannot detect the start or end of the shade. It's like watching smoke dissolve into the air. This is vital for her face. Look at the corners of her mouth and her eyes. They don't have hard edges. They dissolve into the shadow. This softness, this lack of defined boundary is what gives her expression its incredible, haunting realism. It allows the features to appear slightly blurred, creating the illusion of movement. She doesn't just look like a person, she looks like a person caught in a moment, about to shift their gaze, about to change their mind. This softness, born of scientific precision, is the first key to her fame. The second pillar involves the eyes. When you look at the Mona Lisa, you feel like she is looking directly at you. You walk across the room and her gaze follows. This isn't magic, it's optical physics. Leonardo understood that the appearance of direct gaze is created when the sitter's pupils are oriented directly forward and the light source is rendered consistently. But he did something more profound. He painted the white highlights, the small pinpricks of reflected light, in her eyes with such scientific accuracy that they create a sense of three-dimensional depth, almost like tiny glass spheres. More importantly, he used sfumato around the eyes, softening the socket and the eyelid. This trick allows the viewer's eye as it moves to continually reinterpret the direction of her glance. She seems alive because she doesn't maintain a rigid stare. She appears to be internally processing, subtly shifting her focus, reflecting the dynamism of real human interaction. She seems not just painted but present. And finally, the smile. This is the element that launched 1,000 theories. Why is it so famously elusive? Why do we see it and then lose it? Again, it's sfumato and optics working together. The ambiguity of the smile is an engineering achievement. Leonardo intentionally blurred the boundaries around the mouth. When you look directly at the lips using your foveal or central vision, the blurring makes the downturned corners of her mouth look almost serious, perhaps even slightly sad. The smile disappears. But when you look at her eyes or the bizarre landscape behind her, your peripheral vision takes over. And because the subtle shadows Leonardo painted are more dominant in your peripheral field, the corners of her mouth appear to lift. The smile returns. The Mona Lisa forces your brain to constantly flip-flop between two interpretations. She is both smiling and not smiling. She is both happy and serious. It's a perpetual, unresolved puzzle. This ambiguity is the psychological hook that keeps us staring. It makes the painting feel like it's responding to you, a mirror of your own mood. The mystery of the smile is not in the painting, it's in the viewer's brain. This intentional uncertainty is the third pillar of her immortal fame. Technical genius alone doesn't create global fame. Many paintings are technically brilliant but remain obscure. The Mona Lisa needed something else, a privileged journey and an association with absolute power. Leonardo was so obsessed with the portrait, some sources say he worked on it for 16 years, that he never delivered it to the merchant Francesco del Giocondo. He took it with him when he left Italy, carrying it like a personal relic. In 1517, he moved to France under the patronage of King Francis I. Francis I was a huge fan and a benefactor. When Leonardo died, the king acquired the Mona Lisa. This is a critical, often overlooked detail. The painting immediately passed into the hands of the French royal collection. It wasn't hung in a church, traded by nobles, or seen in public. It was a private treasure locked away in palaces like Fontainebleau. This meant the painting was elevated from a mere piece of art to a symbol of French national wealth and power. It had royal provenance, the highest possible pedigree. Over the next 2 centuries, it moved through the French palaces, largely unseen by the public, adding to its mystique. Fast forward to the French Revolution. When the monarchy was overthrown, the royal collection was nationalized, and the Louvre was opened as a public museum. The Mona Lisa finally became public property. For a brief, incredible time, it even hung in Napoleon Bonaparte's private apartments at the Tuileries Palace. The greatest general of the age had the world's greatest portrait in his bedroom. Imagine the gravity that lent to the object. It eventually found its way back to the main galleries, settled comfortably as a masterpiece of the Italian Renaissance. It was famous among connoisseurs, but not yet a global household name. That required one final, explosive ingredient: scandal. The Mona Lisa's moment of transition from masterpiece to global icon happened in the darkness of an August night in 1911. This single criminal act is the most important reason why you know her name today. It was the crime that launched 1,000 headlines. On August 21, 1911, the Louvre was closed. A 29-year-old Italian immigrant and former Louvre employee named Vincenzo Peruggia hid in a storage closet overnight. Peruggia wasn't a master thief, he was a painter and a patriot. He believed the Mona Lisa had been stolen from Italy by Napoleon, which was factually incorrect, as Francis I acquired it legally. The next morning before the cleaning staff arrived, Perugia walked into the Salon Carré, lifted the small wooden panel off the wall and with shocking simplicity unscrewed the protective glass frame. He wrapped the painting in his smock, tucked it under his arm, and walked out the back door. The next day, when a portrait painter came to sketch the Mona Lisa, he found only 4 iron pegs and a vast, empty space on the wall. The world went insane. The news didn't just make headlines, it consumed them. Why? Because the idea that the most sacred object in the world's most prestigious museum could simply vanish was terrifying and sensational. The empty space became more famous than the painting itself. The French police mobilized every resource. They suspected everybody: German rivals, disgruntled former employees, avant-garde artists. Pablo Picasso was even questioned as he had previously bought stolen Iberian sculptures. For 2 years the wall was empty. Tourists, tens of thousands of them, came not to see the painting but to gaze at the blank space where it used to be. The absence cemented the painting's fame. The media machine took over. The face of the Mona Lisa was printed on everything. It became the first piece of art to truly be mass-produced, turning it into a recognizable brand image for the entire world. When Perugia was finally caught in Florence in 1913 trying to sell the painting, the media frenzy around its return was even greater than its disappearance. The painting was paraded through Italy like a national hero before being returned to Paris. It was no longer just Lisa Gherardini or a Renaissance masterpiece. It was the stolen, recovered global symbol of art itself. The theft, disappearance, and triumphant return gave the painting a narrative, a dramatic human story that transcended its academic value. It became a celebrity because it survived a kidnapping. So, why is the Mona Lisa famous? It's not one reason, it's 5 layers of fame perfectly stacked, creating an unstoppable legend. The genius: it was painted by Leonardo da Vinci, the ultimate icon of human potential. The technique: it used sfumato and optical tricks to achieve an impossible living realism. The mystery: the ambiguous smile forces psychological engagement, making the viewer part of the puzzle. The pedigree: it was owned by a king and a conqueror, Francis I and Napoleon, associating it with elite power. The scandal: the 1911 theft blasted its image onto front pages worldwide, turning a masterpiece into a media brand. Today, the Mona Lisa is arguably no longer a painting. It's a global cultural monument, an icon of human achievement, mystery, and resilience. We don't just look at a portrait, we look at 500 years of history, 2 years of crime, and 1,000 years of scientific ambition, all compressed onto a small panel of wood. Its fame endures not because it's the most beautiful painting, but because it's the one that most successfully resists a final answer. It's the art that keeps asking us, "What do you see?" And as long as we keep debating, she keeps smiling. This story shows us a fundamental truth about success. Sometimes the enduring reputation is built not on perfect clarity, but on compelling, layered ambiguity. Leonardo left us a puzzle, and the world has never stopped trying to solve it. Now, the same way Leonardo created an irresistible hook in his painting, the unfinished tension of the smile, you need an irresistible hook in your own life. Don't just walk away from this video and forget the lesson. I want you to apply the principle of layered value to your own personal goals. What is the one skill, the one idea, the one project you've been neglecting? Your momentum homework today: find one area in your work or study where you're trying to achieve perfect clarity. Maybe it's a business plan, a script, or a difficult conversation. Instead of finishing it completely, I want you to introduce an element of calculated ambiguity, a compelling question, an open loop, a deliberate mystery that draws people in and forces them to engage. Just like that famous smile. What is your greatest unfinished work? Tell me in the comments below. What is the Leonardo level ambiguity you are going to inject into your next project to make it irresistible? Let's start a conversation about creating lasting legacy, not just temporary success. If this deep dive into genius and history has inspired you to look closer at the world and closer at yourself, Hit that like button and subscribe to Mindset Momentum for more historical and psychological breakdowns of success. Until next time, keep creating, keep questioning, and keep the world guessing.